So, this groove right here is your classic jazz swing. In fact, the drum kit is actually invented for jazz music. You see, one day, well, originally, Dixieland bands in New Orleans would have usually one snare drum player and one bass drum player. However, one day the bass drum player didn't show up for the gig. So the snare drum player was like, I think I can play this with my foot. And so he takes the bass drum off the bass drum mount, puts a mallet on it, and starts to kick it with his foot. That's how the drum kit was born. Jazz itself also started in New Orleans with a style called second line. Sounds like this. There's also more styles of jazz. This right here is your swing rhythm, emphasizing 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, while my bass drum lightly plays quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's jazz in 4/4, but jazz can also be in other time signatures too. This is the jazz waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then a guy named Dave Brubeck came along and said, let's put it in 5. Nope, that's still 3. Here's 5. He did that on a song called Take 5. I think it's a fitting name. There's also different styles of jazz that move away from the drumstick. And they're a little bit slower, a little bit more tender. In fact, what I have in my hands now are what are called brushes. You can see I'm doing what's called stirring the pot. It's a very common maneuver to do on jazz ballads. You hear, well, you'll notice that drums can't really sustain. Cymbals can. You hear how that note rings out, but a drum is just dead right after. So the brushes allow us to kind of find a way to make a drum sustain in its own sound. That said, while brushes are usually made for ballads, they can still be played fast. We're going to take a break from jazz, even though I don't want to, and move on to Latin music. So you'll notice here, in really most Western music, and you'll recognize this from your lessons here at Apollo, we count using numbers, and we kind of feel a pulse that we call the beat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In Latin music, it's a little bit different. They feel a different kind of pulse. What we would call a rhythm, they call it their form of beat. And this is called the clave, and it sounds a little bit like this. So, this is the Latin clave. Now I'm going to put my pulse under it. So you can hear how that fits. Now usually the bass drum isn't playing just quarter notes. They're doing what's called a timbale, and that's usually in duet with the bass guitar. That's going to sound like this. Now, at this point, they wouldn't really play it with brushes. They'd probably be playing it with an instrument called clave. Sounds more like that. Then, on the bell of a cymbal or a cowbell, they'll do a rhythm called the cascada. That sounds like this. So all together, it would sound like this. There's many different types of Latin rhythms. However, while Latin music is hip, let's get to a form of music we may be a little bit more familiar with. This right here is your basic rock beat. You'll notice in jazz, the driving instrument was our ride cymbal, right? That's where all the energy comes from. It's a little bit different in rock and roll. Our two main instruments driving the song here are going to be your kick drum and your snare drum. There's also a lot of different types of rock grooves. But you might be familiar with a groove like this. You can play it slow. Play it fast. Or you play it really slow. Rock itself was born really out of blues music, kind of like jazz. You know, so this sort of this blues shuffle feel, all they did was take the shuffle out of it. Right? Finally, I want to show you some funk music, my personal favorite. Funk music is kind of like a really spicy combination of all of these three genres. So you've got the kick and snare driving it, right? Let's take this groove. But our hi-hat isn't just playing eighth notes, it's kind of filling in the space. This is a style of drumming called linear drumming, where we take a solid rhythm, such as 16th notes, and we fill up every 16th note with some form of drum. But it's up to us to decide which drum and which volume we fill that space with. So, hopefully you got some information out of that.